We've seen a lot of bad contracts that have wrecked deals, that have wrecked businesses.
Do not call your lawyer and say, write me a contract. This building owner has lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. What are you providing? What are they paying? How and when? Take the time to put yourself in your customer's shoes or your landlord's shoes or whatever and say, these are the terms I want. You got to know these things.
If you have a bad contract, you have a bad deal. You're screwed.
As a business owner, you should. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Main Street Business Podcast, where we help business owners around the country with their tax and legal issues, topics, all those things that can really beset and cause a business owner problems or help them leap into success. We got a good one today.
Yeah, we got a good one today. We want to talk about the 4 contracts you need to know as a small business owner or investor. These are contracts that are going to come up in your life, so you want to make sure you know them.
I would go with more than know. Well, you almost need to know them backwards and forwards, memorized almost. I mean, you got to know these things.
You just came back to know.
Well, okay, fair enough. But you got to really know. Yeah. You say, really. I'm going to add some adjectives. Yeah. But the point is, business owners, a lot of times, once they set it, forget it, they think they're okay.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of bad contracts that have wrecked deals, that have wrecked businesses, and have caused issues with customers, that have put you in a bad situation in a lease. And so we want to go over those scenarios. We want to hit these 4 contracts, give you some tips and pointers, and because we want the law to be on your side.
Okay? Ooh, boy, that sounds so good. That's like a commercial. Yeah. Now, I'm gonna give kudos to Matt Sorensen. It's literally, I'm going to say this honestly, come up with one of the top 5 best legal quotes I've ever heard. I mean it. And I want to tell you I love you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so one of the 5, the bad contract quote. Yeah. Give it to them. The people, you got to write this down.
Yeah, you need to know this, and you need to live this.
Yeah.
If you have a bad contract, you have a bad deal. Okay. If the contract sucks, you're screwed.
No matter how good the deal can be.
No matter how good the deal is. In fact, the better the deal, if you have a bad contract, you're really screwed because the other person on the other end of the deal knows it. And if that contract sucks, they're going to want to get out of it. And so focusing on having a really tight contract is really important. But past that too, it's also that we want to get a clear understanding of everyone, of what's supposed to happen. It's about setting expectations. And a lot of times people think, this is just boilerplate. No, if there's any little dispute, the only thing we have to rely on is this contract, this piece of paper that has words written on it. It really matters.
Yeah, it's brutal. Now, I want to give you the 4 that we're going to talk about here. And at some point, I'm going to tell my Arnold Schwarzenegger story on this.
That's a good one. Yeah.
It is a good one, isn't it? It's worth it, people.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the 4 contracts we're going to talk about today. A lease agreement. So if you have a rental property or you're leasing property back to your business.
Or from just a landlord, either one.
Oh, yeah. Or you're leasing property. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Lease agreement, no matter what side of the lease you're on.
Everyone here.
Oh, yeah, very important. Number 2, a partnership agreement. Now, you may say, well, that's a partner. No. It's a contract at its core. So if you have a partner, an LLC, that operating agreement is a contract. And what is going on in your partnership? Number 2, any employment type agreement. You may not have it. We're not believers in employment contracts, but you still may have a letter of understanding with an employee. Or if you have a third-party vendor that you have a tight relationship with, what does that agreement look like? That's number 3.
And you might have independent contractors. I want to touch on that too. So some of you might be like, I have agents or people that are independent contractors. We want to hit that for a second too.
Yeah, and the funny part is number 4 is if you're an independent contractor or you're a business owner, what is the contract you provide for the delivery of your services? So in this contract, are you selling a product or service? What's your customer agreement, terms and conditions? Do you really understand what your customers are expecting? So number 3 is you as a business owner in a relationship with a contractor or an employee. Number 4, as a business owner or a vendor, what are you having people sign?
Yeah.
Okay, those are 4.
All right. You want to go 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah. Should we do number 1, and then I'll tell my Arnold story. Let's get number 1 out of the way first. What do you think?
Let's get some meat. Lease? Yeah, let's get into the lease. Okay. Well, let's talk about you being the tenant. Okay, you've got a business, maybe you're a storefront, maybe you have an office, and I want to talk about you being the tenant and going in.
And I want to give Matt kudos again too. All of our lease agreements, because we own some of our buildings, and spaces, and we're also a tenant in some of our spaces. And Matt knows in our partnership we have strengths and weaknesses. Matt negotiates our leases.
Yes.
Mark Kohler gets to look over his shoulder and go, yeah, that. And Matt's like, shut up.
No, what happens is I said, where do you want your office? Oh, you want the corner with the window? Cool. All right.
Yeah, that's all the part I play. No, but you're good at this.
Yeah, I think, and this is, you kind of got to get into the details with this, and you need to know kind of the basic rules of the game. So when you're getting into a commercial lease, you need to know something called triple net. Okay, you need to understand that there are different types of commercial leases out there. One is just going to be kind of a fixed lease. Sometimes it's called a gross lease, where it's like, all right, this is all in. Like it's $5,000 a month. It's all inclusive. Maybe you got to pay the cable or something, but like they're covering everything: utilities, taxes, insurance. Like you're just paying rent, like you think about paying rent for a home for living. And so if that's the case, the lease better say that. Now, a lot of people get surprised, and business owners over the years I've talked to, they sign a lease and they didn't understand what the heck triple net was. Like, well, they said the rent was only $5,000 a month. No, plus the triple net cost, taxes, insurance, maintenance, okay? And they're like, wait, I'm getting charged when I call you to have someone come and fix something? Yeah, that's getting charged to you back through the lease. Wait, I got to pay the utilities? I have to pay your insurance? Your insurance, landlord? Yeah. I got to pay your property taxes? Yeah, that's what triple net is. So make sure you first understand like what lease deal you're negotiating here.
Yeah, now I'm glad you led with that, but I am going to say this. We could do a 3-hour series on leases, how to understand them, how to negotiate them, how to draft them. But let's just give a couple of examples why this is so important. I like the triple net example. What is the renewable term?
Ooh, yeah.
How much does it cost to renew? And how much control do you have over that renewing experience? You could get kicked out unknowingly. We've had clients in that situation. What happens if there are damages, an act of God, a fire, water, repairs, all these little details. You need to know that lease backwards and forwards. And so the point today, and I don't want you to get frustrated like, well, holy crap, tell me all these things. Like I said, we could do this for 3 hours. The point today is you can already sense this is a lease you've got to know. And if it's a little too legal, that's what the lawyer's job is to say, hey, will you sit down with me and explain what this provision means? You might just pay a lawyer for an hour. Say, walk me through this lease. Because I don't speak legalese every day. Tell me what this means. And so, I've got a terrible story I want to share on this too. But I think a lot of it is just getting engaged and understanding every provision.
Yeah, and I love the renewal. That is so key because you got to think of what's your growth opportunity, what's realistic, and also are you going to grow out of this space, and what's the term I need? Maybe I want to get a shorter term, but give me renewal options so that I can stay longer if I want. But if I grow out of this space, there's all these little factors you want to think about. The last thing I'd give on the lease agreement, just in terms of tips, is the tenant improvements. When you typically lease a commercial property, you can negotiate tenant improvements if you're going to have a long-term lease. If you're like, well, I'm just going to lease for a year, the landlord's going to be like, space as is. Then you're going
to rent for 1 year, knock yourself out.
Yeah, as is, and if you want to improve it or change a wall or add in a kitchen in the corner, you're paying for it. But if you're like, no, I'm signing a 5-year lease or maybe even 3 years, the landlord might be like, all right, I'm going to throw in tenant improvements. I'm going to give you a budget of an X amount or certain amount per square foot to redo the offices you would want for your space for your business. And so know what that is, and also realize that if you're signing a longer term lease, the landlord typically pays for that. They will pay for that tenant improvement as part of the process.
I love it. Now, let me give an example. On the flip side, you might be the landlord. This could relate to your rental property portfolio, and you're leasing to another business. So you're going to be on the other side of the table now. So the provisions are going to cut a different way, if you will. And so, but the importance of understanding every provision and then how to carry them out is so important. I literally just had a client last month, Matt, that I talked with. They've had a commercial lease for over 10 years, and it was a triple net. So they were the landlord, they owned the building, they were leasing it to this client. Now, they've had this a long time. Back in the day when they signed it, a triple net works like this. You're going to pay me X number of rent per month, and then I'm going to bill you for the CAM, common area maintenance, this triple net piece. Yeah. I'm going to bill you every month, and then at the end of the year, we'll true it up. Okay. So back when they had signed this lease, the business owner was alive and well. The family inherited this property, yada, yada. Somewhere along the way, they forgot to keep billing the monthly CAM. They got the rent every month. They thought, oh, we got our rent. And somewhere there was a snafu where they didn't bill for the CAM. And it went on for years. So now the tenant's like, man, this is a great lease.
Yeah.
I've never got a bill for CAM. This is wonderful.
The day of reckoning came.
Yeah. Well, and now because there's a lot of principles in the law that you just can't show up and bill for the past 10 years, but now you're saying, well, moving forward, we're going to get back on this. The tenant's now like, well, maybe it's time to move, and I don't know. And so it's created a weird political situation. They've lost 5 to 10 years worth of CAM, and it was terrible. But what happened is somewhere in the mix, someone didn't read the lease properly on how to charge for CAM, when to charge for CAM, and this building owner has lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. And it's really sad. But again, we can't expect our accountant to know this. We can't expect our lawyer to know this. This is on you, the owner of the business, as the tenant or the landlord.
Yeah. I've ran into that so many times of people getting billed certain stuff between landlord or tenant, and no one reads the damn lease to see who's responsible for it, And so, so that's where like knowing this stuff is really critical. I think a lot of clients sometimes call and they're like, I want to get out of this contract, or this contract's like, it's not fair or whatever. And they just think I'm going to come up with, well, if we just apply the Jones versus Smith case
you're out
in 1989, we can get you out of this, because it's not fair. A judge decided that but no, it is whatever is written on the contract is what it is. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, this is like the Constitution. This is what the law is, what you put in the contract. Yeah. So the more you know it, the more you can protect yourself and not get taken advantage of.
I'm already thinking of a story for our third contract. Okay, number 2, partnership agreements. Can I lead it off?
Yeah.
Okay. So as I said earlier, a partnership agreement could literally be titled partnership agreement, but typically it's going to be your LLC operating agreement. Some of you might hear the word joint venture, and that would be considered a partnership agreement as well. But again, at the end of the day, these are all a contract. And I like what Matt just said. So let it be written, so let it be done. That's Yul Brynner, 10 Commandments. All right. So that partnership agreement is so important. And we've done podcasts just on partnership agreements. So please go back and listen to those where we really unpack it a little bit more. But what typically happens, there's several things that could happen, is people are, the sun's shining, we're going to make so much money, high five, we're at Denny's, and we shake hands. And the partnership agreement or the operating agreement's an afterthought. And whatever they agreed to and verbally did not end up in the operating agreement. And then the storm clouds come, recollection of what the agreement was is verbal versus written. Guess which one's going to control what's written? And all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, I did not look at the contract. And you can't even count the number of lawsuits over this sort of issue.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And, a lot of businesses are going to have some turmoil, particularly new businesses. They don't make money. It takes years before you hit profitability on average. Okay, that's average. All right. Let's not talk about the ones that are below average. And so there's a lot of risk in this, and it's great to do it with a partner. I've been fortunate enough to have an amazing partner over the years, and so it's been pretty easy, But
same,
and we really
are lucky.
I am lucky. Yeah, we seriously have had a great partnership ourselves, but we've also had 100 consults between the two of us with partnerships that are a disaster, and a lot of it can be solved by a partnership agreement where you're getting clear on the terms. And I'll give you one common one I've had this one probably like 3 or 4 times over my career as a lawyer. They run out of money. They run out of money, and they're like, well, who's going to put money in? And sometimes you have a partnership where someone's like the work partner and someone was the money partner. And guess what? Whose responsibility is it to put more money in when you've ran out of? Let's say the money partner said, I'm going to put $100,000 into this business. Well, whose responsibility is it to put if you need 120 and we're now 2 years in and the money partner hasn't got any money back, and the work partner's like, I've been working my tail off for 2 years. We're like, we need 20 grand to keep this thing moving for the next 3 months. What are we going to do? Well, what does the partnership agreement say you're going to do? Okay.
Oh, it's silent on this?
Oh, it doesn't say. And you're 50-50? Oh, how are we going to decide this? So now let me just say this. By default, if you didn't say, that means you're both going to be responsible to put it in. Now, you could say, hey, cash partner, if we need more money, because I need you to put it in, I'm going to have to work more, and I'm the work partner. Say that. Agree to it.
Yeah.
The problem comes later when you didn't think about that.
Yeah, and you could always add a provision. Okay, if we need extra money, it's a loan provision with a simple interest rate that's
what
not.
our operating agreement says.
Yeah, ours does. And it's not onerous, meaning really bad for the person that's not putting money in it, meaning like a 10% interest rate or something crazy.
Or it doesn't shift the ownership. So
Yeah.
the person putting more money in gets more ownership and the person not loses it.
And when do you do all this? Well, ideally before you start the partnership. But many of you listening, if you're in a partnership now and you know that there's nothing in writing, or what you have in writing is terrible, and there's been a lot of handshakes over the years, Matt, we should frankly get together and talk. You can still do this. You can sit down and go, hey, we really need to update our operating agreement. Can we put in writing everything we understand to be the case and the truth? And let's look at some, possibilities of some disruption a year from now or 3 years from now. What would we do? Let's put it in writing. And the time to do it is when emotions are low and there aren't storm clouds. So this is something that can be easily remedied. Get out and update your LLC operating agreement. As an aside, this is your time to do your annual minutes, your BOI report. Get with our law firm. We can do what we call a company cleanup, get you a new operating agreement. You can sit down and figure these things out. It can be really affordable too.
Yeah.
Take the time.
Yeah. This is a critical one. And then for those of you that are kind of, maybe it's like you and your spouse in the business, or it's just you. You can skip this one. That one's kind of nice, right?
Yeah. Should we? Okay, is this the interlude where I tell a quick Arnold Schwarzenegger story, and then you go to
it's story time? Yeah.
Okay. Quick story. Now I might have some of the dates or the movie references a little jumbled up, but it's a true story, and
the gist of it's true.
Yeah, and some of the details might be a little gray, but Arnold Schwarzenegger would tell this story, and who is a phenomenal speaker. So now you have to set aside any of you that have some angst against Arnold for his politics or Maria Shriver, or you don't like his movies, whatever. Just put it aside for a minute. The bottom line is the guy came to this country barely able to speak English and became the governor of the state in the country. And it's absolutely unbelievable what he's accomplished. So give him a little cred for that. Now, one thing that happened along the way that played into his role as governor, and this is where the story would show itself, is when he first came to the America, and he was down on Muscle Beach, and he got recruited to start doing some acting classes, and muscle superstars weren't a big deal. All of a sudden, he got a contract for Conan the Barbarian, and that was his first big breakout role. Well, because of his lack of his language barrier and lack of experience, he just signed the deal. And he talks about this. I signed the deal, and I was so excited. Well, it was a great movie, and a great deal, but a bad contract. And he ended up getting paid a pittance. It was not good. And he got taken advantage of by the production company and everybody along the way. Now, again, it could be a Conan, or there was one other one in that same mix, so give me a little latitude here. But he had a bad experience in one of those first movies. And he said to himself, I'm never going to let that happen again. I'm going to read every line of every agreement I ever sign for the rest of my life. And if I've got a language barrier issue, I'm going to stop until I understand the issue. And he committed to that. So fast forward 25 years later, he's governor of the state of California, and his staff hated this, because before he'd sign a bill, before he'd do anything, he's like, I don't understand that provision, explain it. No, I don't understand that, explain it. And he would be meticulous about understanding every provision before he would sign agreements or contracts, or of course legislation. So I just thought that was a really fascinating story, and he's on the public speaking circuit. I've seen him live. It was phenomenal, and the stories he tells and his life experience. But that was one that's really stuck with me.
Yeah, that's a good one, and that solidifies for every contract we're going to be talking about here.
Yep.
Of be like Arnold.
Yeah. So crazy.
All right, let's get into employment agreement, the next one, and this could be sometimes an independent contractor agreement. But the key thing I want to note here, and again, we want to give tips. The key tip I want to say here is make sure you're clear that this is at will employment. Now, you probably should have. You should have an employee handbook that also outlines certain things like what are our holidays? Do we have benefits?
And they sign that.
Yeah, and
it is a contract of sort. In a sense, it's an employment handbook.
They're agreeing to follow the policies of the company, and so you want to have the handbook.
And you know where that helps is unemployment comp. Because
Yes.
when you fire them because they didn't live by the handbook, and then they go claim unemployment, you can go, hey, look at the handbook. So it's different than an employment contract. But I just wanted to say, I like that you brought up the handbook.
Yeah, and I think that but what I'm saying is like the employment agreement itself should just specify, here's what you're going to do, here's what your role is, here's your scope, here's your comp. You're also going to be employee, and you're subject to the terms and conditions of all employees of the company. And that's kind of like what your handbook is like the fallback, so that your offer of employment, and we call it letter of understanding, whatever you want to call it, that goes out to the employee is very specific to them and their role. But also make sure that it does say that it's at will. Okay, at will means that you can fire them at any time and they can quit at any time. All right, you don't want to be where there's actually a contract term where if you fire them, they can be like, well, you owe me the balance of the contract. And so make sure you're indicating that it is at will.
I love it. Now let's talk about third-party contractors. I've got a couple stories here. I'm going to back out on the story I had. I was going to talk about an event space. When you sign a contract to rent an event space for your company for an event, and you got to back out, what are the terms? Oh my gosh, I'll tell you, hotels are the worst.
By the way, I had to do that during COVID for our self-directed IRA summit. And thank goodness, one of those clauses in the contract that no one thinks about, force majeure. Okay, well, what is that? One of those, all these little terms at the
Latin
end that nobody reads,
Yeah.
or like act of God type stuff. Is it you're able to get out of it because COVID? The government was in shutdown. People couldn't go. They couldn't congregate in that group of that large of people. It was illegal. So I was able to get out of it.
Ooh, hotels did take a bath. Now, I want to share. So let's say you're hiring a contractor, a third-party business consultant, a painter, a plumber, someone to come in and do the tenant improvements in your lease space. Those are all contracts and agreements that you want to have a good understanding of what the expectations are, how much you're paying, and da-da-da. Quick example on this. I hired a media consultant, let's call them PR agency, They were independent, a one-person show. They were out of New York. This was probably 5-10 years ago. And they were going to book me at different news interviews. And this was pre-COVID, and I was, getting seen here or there, and I was trying to make a name for myself. I was in my second or third book. And so she was booking me here, here, and here. Well, all of a sudden, I wasn't getting any bookings. I was kind of like, how much are we paying you a month?
Yeah.
La. And so I was like, I'm going to let her go. I'm like, I'm done. She's like, slow down, Tiger. Let's look at your contract. I had not read that as carefully as I thought. I just signed this little service agreement. I had to give her 90 days notice, first of all. So she had this protectionism that she could, all of a sudden, all of her revenue for a month dries up, or one of her bigger clients dries up in 1 month. With no notice, not good. So she had a 3-month tail on this. And there was also a tail that was super interesting, that anybody that she lined me up with as an interview, I could not go to independently for 1 year. It was kind of like a non-compete. If I introduce you to a producer at Fox, for 1 year, you can't go back to that producer at Fox. They could call you, but if I find out if you contacted them, there was a penalty in the contract, like liquidated damages, because this protects her contact list. Because if I pay her, get all of her contacts, fire her a month later, what the hell? So she had this 1 year tail there, and I was like, oh my gosh. And so I had to really figure out, how bad is this gonna hurt? I had the 90-day. It was a pain to get rid of this PR person. So, but it was on me. I did not look at the agreement. I didn't have the foresight to realize what could happen. And so the tip is here, always think of, if I want to get out of this hotel agreement, if I want to get out of it with this third party, what's my exposure? Before you even sign it, just worst case scenario, what's my exposure? And then you can negotiate around it. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, but at least you know.
Yeah, that's a really great point. That is when it's been a long time since I reviewed contracts for clients, but I'm always doing them for our own businesses.
Yeah.
But that was always on my checklist, is like the number one thing is, how do we get out of this? And sometimes I would review a contract. This could be any of these contracts we've talked about. And if I didn't love the terms, or I was like, I don't know if this is a good deal for you. If I had a good out in the contract, like a 30 days notice and we're out, I might be like, well, let's see how it goes. Because we got 30 days to get out. And there's not a big, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Yeah. But if we're tied up for multiple years and we're stuck, or you got a tail like that, or ongoing obligations even after termination, then it's like no deal, no dice. So termination is really, really critical.
Oh my gosh, we could tell story after story here. Okay, number 4. Now you're the business provider. And this is a really different perspective because it can involve a number of things. So let's say I am representing that media PR agent.
They had a good lawyer.
She had a good lawyer.
She had a good contract.
She was like, boom, ready to go. Because she had been burned before.
Probably. Yeah.
Right? Every term in a contract usually is evolved from some dispute or a problem before. So when it's your business, you want to be thinking, how am I protecting myself here? What's my worst case? This client comes on board. They're a pain in the ass to work with. They want more money. They want more time. They want more product. Am I going to deliver that? What are the parameters? What are the expectations? And if I want to get out, or if they want to get out, what is going to happen? And so as a business owner, when you're providing services, and I know you want to talk about product and terms, but and anything you want to add, but as a freelancer, as a consultant, as a service provider, a law firm, an accountant, whatever you're providing, you're going to have a service agreement. It could be a retainer agreement. It could be all sorts of names, but it's a contract. And what are you providing? What are they paying? How and when? What are the worst case scenarios? And as a business owner, you should be like, you should know that backwards and forwards.
Yeah, and I've worked with so many people over the years, clients, helping them draft this. And I think like my kind of principles for this is be very clear about what you're going to deliver. Like for what they're paying, I only want to specify the minimum of what you have to deliver. Because I'm writing this contract to protect you. I'm not thinking about your customer. That's how you want to apply the contract, and if you want to use the contract against your customer, that's up to you. Okay, this is Matt, the lawyer. I'm representing you. I want to write the contract to benefit you and protect you. Because a lot of people mistakenly think when they're writing their contract, I have such great customers, and my great customers won't need this. I'm writing the contract for the shitty customer.
That's right.
I'm writing the contract for the bad customer, all right, that you want to get rid of and you don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a pain in your butt, all right?
Right. Oh, my gosh.
Think of your contract that way and how it can protect you. And if you get into it, that mindset, you're like, all right, here's the minimum of what I need to deliver. Let's be clear on their obligation to you and payment. Termination is always critical about how you want to let them out or not. And you always, a lot of times, depending on what you're doing, you have a lot of upfront costs in them becoming a customer of yours. And so there might be some termination penalties and that, or some type of tail on it for when they can get out. So,
oh my gosh. I love what you said too about the drafting the contract for that one bad customer.
Yes.
And now, this is interesting. You may not expect where I'm going here, but so and that's a great reason. And so you call us up, our law firm, and we got 14 lawyers here, and they could get on a call and help you. Oh, we should talk about how to approach any of these contracts. I've got a tip there. But let's say you get your lawyer and you're going through it. So business owners can get lazy or go, well, I don't want to have my good customer sign this. Because, that's weird. They're a great customer. I don't want to have them sign this. I'm doing this for the bad customers and la, la, la. Well, you never know when a good customer can turn into a bad customer.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we can get very selective on who we have sign agreements. Oh, this is for my brother-in-law. Oh, he'll be fine. You're going to provide services to a family member? You better damn well have a contract. So my point or message here is everybody has to sign your agreement. Maybe your mom doesn't, but that's probably where I draw the line. Everybody else has got to sign this contract because you never know when it can get ugly. And actually, you're preserving a relationship. That's another important point. The contract can preserve the relationship because you don't want to fight over who said, she said what,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, we hit them all.
Yeah.
Let me talk about those just like terms and conditions, a little bit thing here.
You're
just
selling a
mentioned
product.
That.
Yeah.
Maybe you're selling a product. This could be online or in a storefront. And this could be the receipt or the invoice, or it's on the website. Specify the terms and conditions. Is this thing, can it be returned? Can it be exchanged? Are there warranties provided with it? Will you fix things on it if they have problems? Like, that needs to be spelled out and put in writing.
Oh, yeah. And these online businesses, so many of our, I sell online product. I sell online videos. I sell online. So when people buy that online, when was the last time you updated your phone on your iPhone? Agree? Agree? You need to have that same thing on your website when people buy your online product, your recurring revenue type products. Mm-hmm. When do I get to hit their card? What happens if they cancel? When do I refund? All of those things save you so much heartache in customer service, and those terms and conditions need to be agreed to.
Yeah.
So good.
All right.
Okay, now here's my tip on application. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to say this. I mean, this actually helps our law firm if you do it the wrong way. So I want you to know I'm kind of doing you a solid here saying this.
Preventative medicine.
This is preventative.
We don't want to be the
Do
ER.
not call your lawyer and say, write me a contract. Okay? That's going to cost you the most. Don't do that. We would take you to the cleaners. Do not call us and say that. No, do not call us and say that. What you want to do is say, okay, I need a lease agreement. I'm going to take my first best stab at it. Maybe you're going to download a template. Maybe you've got one from a prior lease that you used before. Maybe you've got an old employment terms and understanding, an old employment handbook, or you've got an old service agreement, or you took your first stab at it. Go to the lawyer with a draft and say, help me take this across the finish line. What am I missing? Could we add something to it? It's always easier for a lawyer to review something that's maybe 90% there than start from scratch. And I think, now some of you are going to need an attorney just to take it from A to Z. I get it. But if you have something that's okay, and some of you right now are going, oh my gosh, my contracts are jacked. Take them for review. Don't take them to get redone.
Now, I will say this. Now, we might receive that contract to review, and we may be like, I can't polish this turd.
Polish the turd statement. I love it.
We're throwing it out and starting over. So,
yeah.
But at least we know what you're trying to accomplish. And so we can kind of see what you're trying to do and maybe start with a more cleaner, simpler, direct, specific way to do it. Because there's an art to a good contract, I mean, we want to get terms in there that protect you, but you also want to be succinct and be clear about it.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to give your client or someone a 10-page contract and scare them off.
Yeah. It can be like, it's just, it's bad for the environment,
What other thing you said that was helpful, and this will be important when any of you take to get yours reviewed or do a new one, is I like what you said. At least we know the terms you want. Yeah. Holy crap, right? How many times have we been on consults and it's like pulling teeth? What do you want in this agreement? Well, I want this, or I don't know. Oh my gosh, take the time to put yourself in your customer's shoes or your, the landlord's shoes or whatever, and say, these are the terms I want. Because a lot of times we're just trying to understand what the hell you want with this thing.
Yeah. And it really just boils down to the end of the day. What is your obligation? What are you going to agree and commit to be doing? What is their obligation? What do they need to do for you? Maybe it's just paying you, but let's be clear on what the obligations are between the parties. And if you can get really clear on that, that is what will give you success in all these different contracts we talked about. Just being clear on the obligations, getting it written in writing, because that's really what a contract is. It's just two people, a meeting of the minds about what the expectations are. And sometimes when you do have you're off and your customer's like, I don't like that contract. I don't like that, you have a 2-month termination clause. Well, you're not a good customer for me then. Yeah. That's good to know now.
Yeah.
Don't sign the contract. Let me talk to the next person.
Man, there's so many tips here. And here's my last tip. And you've heard me say this over and over and over again over the years. People, there's always another deal. There's always another customer. Do not feel like you have to take a bad customer or take a deal, because if you're prepared and you're being careful and being a smart business owner or investor, the right deal will come along. Now, that doesn't mean you go into analysis paralysis and never pull the trigger, but it doesn't mean you should ever feel forced to pull the trigger with someone that's like, hurry up, sign it, we got a deal, or you're going to miss the deal. Ooh, that's when we slow down.
Exactly.
So, well, all right, man, that was a great show.
That was great.
If I should say so myself.
I think we were amazing. So if you thought we were amazing, give us a 5-star review. Please share this. And we'll be back next week with another amazing episode of the Main Street Business Podcast. Thank you.